The first days at Alejandro's company were a whirlwind for Sofia. The offices were a maze of desks, ringing phones, and hurried conversations. Alejandro had assigned her to the marketing department, where the atmosphere was particularly competitive. "Sofia, I need you to copy these documents and bring them to the meeting room in 10 minutes, said Marta, a co-worker with a stern expression. Sofia nodded nervously and took the papers. As she worked, she felt the gazes of her colleagues on her, some curious, others resentful. She was determined to prove that she deserved to be there. One afternoon, while preparing an important presentation, Sofia noticed that the data she had collected looked strange. She had spent hours working on it and couldn't understand how it could be wrong. "This can't be happening," she whispered to herself, frantically reviewing the figures. At that moment, Marta approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Everything okay, Sofia?" she asked, though her tone lacked genuine concern. "Something's wrong with the data. I checked it 3 times, and now it doesn't make sense," Sofia replied, trying to stay calm. Marta looked at the papers and with a gesture of feigned surprise said, "Oh my, that's a big problem. Maybe you should start over." Sofia felt a knot in her stomach. She knew she didn't have time to redo everything. The presentation was in an hour, and Alejandro was counting on her. "I have to fix this," she said, more to herself than to Marta, and hurried to review the original files. Despite her efforts, the presentation ended up being a disaster. Alejandro, sitting at the head of the table, frowned as Sofia tried to explain the errors. When it was over, he asked everyone else to leave the room. "Sofia, what happened?" he asked, his voice firm but not without empathy. I'm so sorry, Alejandro. I don't know what happened. I checked everything multiple times, but something went wrong," Sofia responded, her voice breaking. Alejandro sighed, looking at the disorganized papers. "I understand you're under a lot of pressure, but I need you to focus. This presentation was crucial." Sofia nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. She left the room feeling guilty and desperate. That night, in her small apartment, she replayed the events over and over, trying to understand what had gone wrong. The next day, she decided she couldn't continue like this. She needed to prove her worth, but the constant sabotage was destroying her confidence. She gathered her courage and decided to confront Marta. "Marta, can I talk to you for a moment?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Sure, Sofia. What do you need?" Marta replied, with a smile that Sofia found insincere. "I know something is happening with my work. The errors in yesterday's presentation were not accidental. I need to know if there's something I can do to improve and avoid these problems," Sofia said, looking her directly in the eyes. Marta observed her for a few seconds before responding. "Sofia, this is a very competitive place. You need to be more careful and make sure to review everything you do. If you need help, ask for it," she said, but her tone was still not entirely sincere. Sofia nodded, although she wasn't satisfied with the response. She decided to seek support from other colleagues and started asking for advice from those who seemed more approachable. "Carlos, do you have a moment?" she asked a young man who had always been kind to her. "Of course, Sofia. What do you need?" Carlos replied, setting aside what he was doing. "I'm having trouble with my tasks and need to improve. Could you give me some tips?" she asked, feeling vulnerable but determined. Carlos smiled and nodded. "Of course. Come, I'll show you some tricks that have helped me." With Carlos's help and that of other colleagues, Sofia began to improve. She supervised every detail and double-checked the work she was given. Gradually, things started to get better. Alejandro noticed her effort and dedication, and although he didn't comment, Sofia could see a spark of approval in his eyes. As the days passed, Sofia felt she was finally finding her place. She knew the road ahead was still long, but she was determined to keep going and prove she deserved every opportunity Alejandro had given her.